As Ken has stated, I'm from Scarlet Alliance, Australian Sex Workers Association, yet another organisation that Andrew was involved with at some time. I've got some slides which don't seem to be working just now. It's stuck.
So it's okay. Let me be your personal assistant.
Thank you. And the slides have just got examples of international sex worker organisations, so they don't really relate to my speech per se, but just some nice pictures to look at. And if you look very hard on the edges of the frame, you can see Andrew Hunter just quietly working the crowd from the sidelines. Okay, so my session is about the right to associate or organise, or the subtitle is Why Sex Workers Must Lead in Efforts to Legitimise Sex Work. So something you might have noticed around the conference is that sex workers are a very vocal group. We're not afraid to speak up and to stand up for our rights. For many of us, arrest, violence by government and authorities, and laws that invalidate and criminalise our choice of occupation is a fact of life. We're outcasts, we're stigmatised and we're marginalised, but herein also lies our power. We aren't afraid to speak up for fear of what you might think of us, for fear of what people might say. We've heard it all and now we reclaim it. So for anyone who believes in the convenient lie of the silent sex worker, I ask you to open your eyes and look at what is going on around the world. For sex workers, the luxury of silence and apathy is not an option. It's our lives and livelihood that is at threat. So people take for granted that you can go to work as a doctor, a researcher, academic, or a bureaucrat. No one questions your right to do so. No one expects that you could wake up and go to work and your workplace has been shut down and boarded up. There's no explanation, no entitlements, no final paycheck, and no opportunity to seek redress. Worse still, you might be at work when the police come to shut down your workplace, simply because of the occupation you have chosen. Strange to imagine, but this is the reality for many sex workers around the world. So you think to yourself, well, this is really terrible, but what does this have to do with HIV prevention? Viewing sex workers' work and regulating it within a labour rights framework has a multitude of benefits, and it's a crucial element in combating the global HIV pandemic. Health promotion doesn't happen in isolation. Our health and well-being is attached to the environments in which we work. Our ability to protect ourselves at work and to access effective HIV prevention and treatment is tied into the reduction of stigma and discrimination and the recognition of our rights and ability to choose how and where we work. At the UN high-level meeting on HIV in 2011, many countries around the world committed to intensifying our efforts to eliminate HIV and AIDS as signatories to the political declaration on HIV/AIDS. A key element of this was in recognising the crucial role of human and legal rights in preventing and eliminating HIV. So countries around the world committed to the rights of all people to enjoy the highest attainable standard of health, including HIV prevention and treatment. And these rights should apply to all people, including sex workers and sex workers living with HIV. In reality, sex workers often face high levels of harassment by police and government, have limited or no access to rights and legal redress, and are not only criminalised by specific laws against us, but we're also unprotected by the laws that are designed to protect us. Stigma, discrimination, human rights abuses and criminalisation of our work are challenges that sex workers face daily. And these factors have also been recognised as the greatest barriers to controlling the HIV epidemic. In 2012, the Global Commission on HIV and the Law reported that sex workers are criminalised in over 100 countries, and that 51% of sex workers do not have access to HIV prevention services. In fact, I think that those numbers are probably conservative. I would suggest that probably all countries criminalise some aspect of sex work. Experience shows us that punitive laws, policies and practices around sex work do not reduce the number of sex workers or our clients, but they can. But they do reduce our access to justice and create barriers to access and support and increase our vulnerabilities to HIV. Criminalisation has been shown to negatively impact on HIV programs and services for sex workers. And decriminalisation is essential to improving the health, safety and human rights of sex workers. So, evidence from places that have decriminalised sex work, such as New Zealand and New South Wales and Australia, reveals that labour rights for sex workers has increased access to HIV and sexual health services and does encourage condom use. And in contrast, in countries where sex work is criminalised or otherwise legally oppressed, higher numbers of sex workers are currently living with HIV. A number of studies have found laws against sex workers and sex work increase vulnerability to HIV by increasing stigma and discrimination, and by limiting our access to health services, and by generally having a negative impact on sex workers' self-determination and ability to making informed choices. Removing criminal laws is essential, but it's not enough to prevent sex workers from being arrested, abused, harassed and mistreated by police and military. Laws are different in each country and even in each state and territory within countries. Sex workers are affected by many different laws and policies aimed at preventing or regulating sex work. And this can include the criminal or punitive laws that make all or some parts of sex work illegal, such as criminalisation of clients, as you heard about from Pia, and the anti-trafficking laws. Regulations, civil and administrative regulations, local council regulations, decrees, executive orders, local ordinances and policies, such as loitering or public offences and indecency. Laws or traditional practices around the protection of morality or culture and religion. Laws against sodomy. Laws against the order of nature and adultery. I think I heard from Monica Jones that she got charged with manifesting for looking like a sex worker. Public health laws, such as the detention of sex workers living with HIV. Sex workers face a range of issues that can transcend the culture or the legal status of sex work. Law enforcement, others in position of power, act in ways that are negative for sex workers. Written laws and policies do not always reflect the actions of law enforcement health official. For example, in many countries, the possession of condoms or money is assumed by police to be proof of sex work, even in Australia. Sex workers are regularly targeted for arrest and prosecution, resulting in barriers to access to healthcare, services, support, testing, treatment and justice. So I'm just going to, in 2013, NSWP released a report on sex work human rights in the law, which outlined sex workers' fundamental rights. This consensus statement followed from a global consultation of the NSWP membership of 160 sex worker organisations and projects in over 60 countries from around the world. So I'm going to read you the section on the right to organise. The criminalisation and legal oppression of sex work limits sex workers' efforts for collective advocacy and self-determination. This makes it dangerous or illegal for sex workers to form associations and undertake advocacy, peer support, service provision without risk of police surveillance, arrest and/or detention. Stigma and discrimination against sex workers reduce the capacity for sex workers to organise and build stronger movements that aim to improve sex workers' health and safeties. Although sex workers in some regions can establish trade unions, criminalisation and the lack of legal recognition of sex work as work undermines sex workers' ability for collective bargaining and improving working conditions. Sex worker organisations that are sex worker-led, evidence-based, that take a human rights approach to challenging poor laws, policies and practices are the most effective in addressing working and social conditions. Thank you.